Okay, hey, welcome to this week's episode of War. This is not Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. This is KUDEN. What the hell am I talking about? Anyway, that's just a sign that I've got a lot of stuff going, right? Anyway, welcome to KUDEN. Uh, so uh, uh, we've picked up more subscribers on some of the audio only places. So if you're long-time listener, uh, what do they say? Long-time listener, first-time caller. Um, is that what it is? Anyway, all right. So I also figure that some people were thrown off by the rather crass or less than nice title for this week's episode. I don't usually use words like that, but as my Mikyo teacher has reminded me several times along in my early career, my job isn't to make people happy. My job is to wake people up. So hopefully it did that, right? And if it offended people, even better, because that's usually when we really wake up because we're looking for all the reasons to be pissed off. And so, right. But anyway, right. So I'm going to kick this one off with a quick quote from my teacher, Grandmaster Hatsumi, from many years ago, right? He said, "We live in a sad time when you can't teach somebody a lesson who seriously deserves one." Right, we'll talk about that and more when we get started.
The big question is this: how are self-defense and success-minded people like us, concerned citizens worried about protecting ourselves, our loved ones, and the things we care about from the monsters we know exist in the world? How do we train in a way that gives us the skills, knowledge, and understanding we need without becoming paranoid fighters or killers ourselves, and yet still allows us to be the hero protector the world needs us to be? That's the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Jeffrey Miller, and welcome to KUDEN Radio, real training for real people in a real world.
Really? Oh, I guess so. I'll stick with that story. Anyway, hey, welcome back. So we're officially underway with episode 183. We're going to have to plan something cool for episode 200. Yeah. So, hey, guess what I found yesterday? Right? Was yesterday? Yeah, yesterday. I was cleaning out my car. And I found in this storage container that I had, because I keep moving stuff back and forth between home office and whatever, but I still had things in my car from the rebuild and getting everything back in the house post fire recovery and all that stuff. And I found an envelope from something that I had done with Eric White when he was my co-host way back in the day, right? Radio God. So Eric had designed and had made some really cool magnets. Now they're really thin, right? But they were KUDEN branded kind of things, right? So some are square, like a really small tepon kind of thing, right? Like just a piece of metal that you'd lay around and the ninja would use as a weapon. And other ones were shuriken shaped, right? And so they were KUDEN. So what I thought was, let's see, we're at 183. So let's do this for 185. We'll do a contest during that one, and we'll do this along the way. I've got a handful of each of these, so let's see who's paying attention and who's like engaging and all that kind of stuff. And for those folks who are on live, so this will give people on the audio only side a chance to kind of like jump on. So whether you do it via the Facebook page or either the Facebook pages, right? Mine or the KUDEN podcast page, or you do it on the Jeffrey Miller, what is it? Jeffrey Miller 36, I think, YouTube channel. See, I don't even know my own shit. Anyway, so if you're on live during an episode, then we'll do a cool little thing. See if I can find that I don't know. It's a cheesy digital spinner kind of thing where we can enter in people's names and stuff and then do a digital spin, and whoever pops up, bing, right, wins one of these things. Yeah, so I thought that'd be cool to do, but to also spring kind of launch into that kind of thing, you and I talked about this earlier, that I want to make this a little bit more interactive, right, and not just open it up to questions. I'm going to ask some damn questions, right? So we'll see where that goes, right? So Anyway, here we are, right? Episode 183. And so uh, what I wanted to talk about was this dichotomy, right? Um, between doubt, right? Different kinds of doubt that can pop up in training, right? Um, but once we get self-doubt out of the way, what I'm talking about really is uh, doubt in a technique, right? Or a doubt in whether or not that technique is applicable in the 21st century for self-defense or whatever, right? And it's not a fine line. It's a freaking chasm, right? The difference between that and uh, this level of disrespect that, for lack of a better word, right? All I could think of was douchey, right? And I don't even use that word, right? What I mean is it's so self-involved and low class that it's like the person doesn't even give any thought to what they're doing, or they have such a need for what they're doing and the way they do it that they're willing to attack verbally, physically, whatever, anyone who or anything that contradicts that, right? So, but both of these things, right? Doubt and disrespect are huge things, right? Within the martial arts world, they're huge things within the self defense realm, right? One of the first lessons I give new students is that respect is our first line of self defense, right? But we have so many people anymore where their primary thought is, I'm not going to give any respect to anybody who's not giving it to me first, right? We've talked about this in the past, right? And I have a major problem with that because, in all honesty, most people don't know any better. They weren't taught any better, right? Um, Whatever, right? Or they're pulling the same game, right? But my thing is, it's just like we've had that discussion at the dojo as well, James. You and I just had a discussion not too long ago where I've got this coffee maker, and some folks can use it and whatever, right? I let staff use it and things like that. But I'm constantly going behind, like I'll go to make coffee or tea or whatever, and there's stains right on the counter or right around it, and I dampen a paper towel and clean it up or whatever. Now I always wipe things down after I'm done, right? Whenever I make things for myself, I always wipe it down because it's just a matter of cleaning up after myself. But there are these stains, right? And I've caught myself in the past getting irritated because, people can't clean up after themselves. But I also had to stop and remember this same thing, right? That depending on what someone's, what I call zero state is, right? Depending on what their baseline is, they may not even be able to see that, right? Unless there's a truck driving through their living room, right? And creates a disaster that is out of the ordinary. It's out of the normal. They can't see it. It's literally invisible, okay, to them, right? So it's the same thing with the respect thing, right? So one of the lessons I got from my teachers is that we show respect not as a sign of, not because of the other person's character, but as a sign of ours, right? And one of my teachers was very fond of reminding us that if we don't ever give anybody a reason to want to knock our teeth down our throat, either because of the words we use or the body language or the gestures or the eye rolling or whatever, right? Then we're only ever going to have to use our skills against or on or to somebody because they're going to attack us no matter what, right? And as a matter of fact, some people will attack you because you're respectful and whatever, because for whatever reason, it screams to them that you're a victim. But won't they be surprised? Okay. So anyway, so I want to talk about these two things, right? Because we need to recognize that one of these things anyway. So I don't sing anyways. As you can tell, I don't sing well. One of these things is an important and necessary piece of the training process. The other one contradicts the training process, right? So, but before I jump into my little spiel, right? What say you, right? Those of you who are on now, right? James, you can check in. So here's the first question for this episode, right? And those of you who are audio only, or you're catching this later on or whatever, you can always post things in the comments, or shoot us an email, right? Shoot something over at warriorc@warrior-concepts-online.com, right? Just let me know this was the episode you're referring to, because we've got a butt ton of things between this and the almost 100 episodes of Whiteboard Wednesday and how many other things I have out. I might not know what you're talking about unless you make a reference, right? But anyway, do you think, and if so, or if not, right, to what degree, right, doubt has its place or even belongs, right, in training, right? Should you doubt your teacher, or should you take everything that they say to be, this teacher said it, so therefore, or not, or to what degree, or what do you think we're allowed to doubt, and what are we never allowed to doubt? Okay, so what do you think? Okay, what do you think? Okay. And while you're typing in your answers so James can read it, right? I'm not talking about self-doubt, okay, because that's going to be dependent upon personality type. Okay. I think some of the best people, right, that should be doing martial arts have confidence issues, have self-doubt, those kind of things, because this can really help, right? But I also know that they're the least likely to reach out, because there's this perception, right? Martial artists, these badass MFers and whatever. And so, if I screw up in class, I'm going to get my ass handed to me or whatever. And while there's douchey instructors that do that kind of stuff, I think I've said, James, did I do this in the last instructor training program? I try to do it in every single instructor training program that we do, where I talk about the need for staff to do outreach and stuff, right? To, even if somebody said, now's not a good time for me to train, to make sure that we're, putting that person in a follow-up system and whatnot, and reaching out to them later, because now might not be a good time, but three months from now might be a good time, right? That the people who need this the most are often the least likely to initiate the contact, right? Which is one of the reasons why I put this stuff out for free a lot, right? And a lot of it. And I appreciate those of you who are, I've had people contact me and let me know that, I have a question. It's okay if you don't answer, because Jesus Christ, with all the free stuff you give out, I'm really concerned for you that you're giving away the store. Well, I'm not. Okay. What I want people to be left with is, if this is what you're giving away for free, holy shit, what are you giving to your students? Enforced accountability. That's what they're getting from me. Right. So sometimes the lessons are the same, sometimes they're different, but it's the depth that we go into a lot of these things. But it's the accountability, right? And sometimes it's a lot of rope, right? Once you become my student, often I'd just stop asking you whether you're doing things or not, because I think the best way to get somebody to hang themselves is to give them plenty of rope, right? And then the world will tug onto things. James and I will be talking about this here in a bit, because we both have backstories, and maybe some of you have too, and we'd love to hear these, right? Where you might have learned something to learn it, you might have had doubt in it, or doubt about when you would use it or whatever, and then the world either punches you in the face or takes your feet out from under you or whatever, right? And the next thing you know, you're like, okay, I'm a believer, right? It's a good thing I practiced that, right? So, but anyway, I think I did enough there to give people a chance to start popping things in. What do we have, James? Anybody pipe up? Anybody have any open onions, also known as opinions? No?
Nothing in reference to your question. Well, wait. Dave Fletch just put in there, trust but verify. You need to trust the teacher to learn from them. Research of the teacher and the system before and during training for frame of reference.
This past Thursday's class for the first 7 steps on the path of a Buddha course that we're doing, I made a statement, and I'll do the same thing here, right? And statistics bear this out, at least on the martial arts side. But on the spiritual side, or the personal development side, all the way into religion. And I'm okay with people showing me that I'm wrong, but based on my observation, based on my experience, when it comes to personal development things, the spiritual realm, religion, whatever, right? I find it beyond interesting. I find it astonishing. That's a big word, astonishing, right? Not just in number of letters, but it's a big word. Anyway, so I find it amazing. There's another word, that people more often than not spend more time trying on an article of clothing, pair of shoes, pants, shirt, sweater, suit, whatever. They spend more time trying on an article of clothing to make sure that it fits and suits the purpose that they're getting it for, right? And will serve them. Then they spend choosing a religion or a spiritual study or a personal development program or whatever, right? And I would venture to say the same is true for martial arts. And I have statistics to back that one up. Because one of the statistics is that most people won't travel more than 12 minutes from either their home or their workplace to attend a martial arts class or program. Now, it's much broader. It's more like 20. It's about 20 where I live, because I live in a semi-rural area. But statistics show that the average person won't travel more than 12 and a half minutes to sign up for a martial arts program, which means that they're choosing things based on convenience, not based on quality. Right? It is the rare person who will travel outside of that, and it is the uber rare person who will travel for hours or dozens of miles or whatever to do that. Okay. And we even proved that to be true during COVID, right? Because we took all of our classes. Well, it was easy, right? We already had an online presence, already had the tech set up, all the stuff that people were scrambling to do in their schools. We literally just flipped a switch and took all of our classes, including our youth classes, virtual during COVID. Okay. And we lost 75% of our active student base, which goes to show that even if you make it like just sickeningly easy, People didn't even have to leave their damn house to attend class. And they couldn't do that, or wouldn't do that, because it wasn't a couldn't. They wouldn't do that. Interesting. Very interesting. Okay. So I think it's no wonder that people end up doubting whether or not what they're learning will work. Okay. Because they're choosing things based on convenience. Not everybody, right? But they're basing things on convenience, or they're basing things on what it looks like, what the teacher looks like, what, okay, how cool it looks, how fast can I get rank? Okay. A very common question that I get is, so once I sign up, on average, how long will it take to get to black belt? I can give you a website address right now. You can go buy one. Okay. There's organizations that have been running ads for decades in the back of Black Belt magazine. And now, of course, on their digital version, right? You sign up for that organization, tell them what rank you want in what style. See, no time at all. Okay. Well, I really want to deserve it. Okay. Well, then it's going to take you as long as it takes you to get that. Because I can't speak to your attitude, aptitude, right? Perseverance, anything like that. Right. And are we talking about quantity or are we talking about quality? Because there's a lot of people that don't understand the paradigm, the learning paradigm. And what I mean by that is they don't understand that in the beginning, the learning of anything, right? Well, this is if they stick to it, right? Because we've spoken on the hierarchy, and I'm on this kick of reminding people the hierarchy of competency, because that just gets in people's way too, right? But if we just talk about the thing that they're staying with, right? In the beginning, all lessons are huge. All lessons are a revelation. Ooh, wow, that's cool. Never saw that before. Great. Okay. And then what happens? Well, the more they see it, the more they do it, the lessons get smaller and smaller. But in the beginning, with those ginormous lessons, they don't have anything else to compare it to. So the lesson, the technique, the kata, whatever, is the lesson. It's the clouds open, sun rays shine through, right? The angelic orchestra plays, oh, whatever, right? Okay. But the more they see things, the more they can compare things, right? Well, I've seen that before. I've done that before. Seen it, done it. Well, it's just a variation of that one. Great. But the lessons are getting smaller so much that it might just be a timing thing. It might just be a slight angling change. It might just be not just a variation, but this shortens the time that it takes for you to go from defense to offense and expands the window, the gap that causes him to not be able to move. Okay. Because in the beginning, right, you're the focus of all the lessons, right? Where do I step? Where does my hand go? How does this technique go? Step 1, step 2, step 3. What am I doing with my body? Whatever. And I know often you have a training partner with you, but as long as you're still trying to figure out where to put your foot, the primary focus is on you, right? Second stage of training, the focus is on them, because now you know how to go to Ichimonji or Nekodachi or whatever. You know how to do this block or that block, or do this technique or that technique. But can you do it based on their timing? Can you do it based on their intent? Can you do it based on their tension or relaxation level? That kind of thing. Can you do it in, against them doing things in a given environment? Right. So now it's based on them, because you know how to do the moves, but can you match and marry your moves to them, letting them lead so that you'll exploit their mistakes? Or are you just trying to do your stuff faster and trickier or whatever, right? And then the final stage, it's a back and forth give and take, and you're not just fitting in, but in our scrolls, it's called Ritsudo, right? Which is often translated as breath or that kind of thing, but it's the rhythm, it's the breath of the fight, right? Can you ride that as opposed to just trading shots? Do you know when you're you should be yielding and receiving, and when you should be pressing, right? And not left brain intellectually, right? So anyway, there are these phases, right? But those tiny little micro lessons can be applied across how many different techniques. So I learned it in this one and I made this technique better, but every technique that employs this little piece just got better at the exact same time, right? And this is why, again, when we're talking about the hierarchy of competency, um, once we start to get that stuff, right, the conscious competency, that's where like the whole process just goes at fucking warp speed, right? Because you get it. Not only do you understand what's supposed to look like, but you can do it, right? Your teacher does this cool little move and you go, holy shit. Well, let me try that, right? Because now you've got the coordination, you've got the flexibility, you've got timing down, things like that. So it's not just one timing, you're able to adjust the timing. You're able to, whatever. It's kind of like when you enter a role, knowing that as you enter the role, you're entering at a certain time. But if you change the tightness of the ball or shift a limb, right? You speed up or slow down the roll if you hold or push your breath out, right? You hold the breath at a certain point, or you slow it down, or you push it out, right? You either increase tension or you decrease tension, and you actually change the speed of the roll midway, right? Which will throw his timing off because he's basing his timing, his brain subconsciously has determined timing by the way he saw you move into it, right? So he's going to make a decision about when you're coming out, right? But you can, right? But it wasn't just in that role thing. Holy shit, if I do that, if I start to shift into a kamae, right? And then I change the time midway, right? It changes, like it throws him off because I won't be where he expected me to be. Do you understand? Okay. But when I explain these things online, I don't just get, I have to look into that. Or I don't understand how that would work or whatever, right? Just natural doubt. I've never seen that before, right? What I get is that's just a bunch of BS, right? Why are you wasting all these people's time on this when, right? You put on gloves and just go train, and that's the nice side of things, right? That's just a bunch of BS, right? I'll come over there and kick your ass myself. That's a whole different level of stuff, right? But anyway, right? So, but in that, and I know some of you guys have been on just about every episode, so I'm going to revisit the uh, hierarchy of competence. As a matter of fact, in James, you were in class tonight. We had 2 new students, 1 adult, 1 youth. A lot of stuff goes over the youth's head. I just reassure them that look, it's okay, right? It's okay to not get it so quickly or whatever. It'll come, right? Because in the higher in the first level, right? The reason it's a triangle, right? The reason that this hierarchy is laid out as a triangle and not a column is because each of the tiers takes longer to get through, or it takes a certain amount of time to get through, right? And it points to a time factor. Like the first one, right? The unconscious incompetency. We don't know how much we don't know, right? We don't know how uncoordinated we are until we're required to do a movement that we've never done before, or we've never done it like that before. And well, if we've never done a movement like that before, see, an enlightened person would go, well, of course you're not going to be able to do that well because your muscles have grown to the degree, to the strength. Your joint flexibility is to a degree and to the strength based on your most common everyday movements. Your body has grown based on doing certain things a certain way all the time. And now you're going to try to do something different. Your muscles aren't, they're not wired for that yet. Your brain doesn't have a neural pathway for that particular movement in that particular way, right? Of course you're not going to get it, right? But this, when people go through this, this creates one of two things. It creates either self-doubt, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this, right? Or flat out, I can't do it, right? Which makes them quit. Or it's not close enough to the way they're already decent at moving. So this is bullshit. This doesn't work, right? And so what do? They quit that and they go looking for something that they're already comfortable with. So they don't ever add any new options. They just add variations of what they can already do. Right? So anyway. All right, James, anybody that give anybody else time to toss things in there?
No, nobody else put anything else in.
Everybody's just waiting for Sensei to give them the answers. Awesome. So something else that pops up in the Mikyo side of training on a regular basis is that ego likes to just get the answers. Okay. So it can sound like it knows. Right. Enlightenment is not based on answers. Answers surround us everywhere. They're everywhere all the time. Okay. They only make sense in light of a question. And the quality of the answer is determined by the quality of the question. So simple question, simple answer. Right? More involved, in-depth, clear question that speaks to specifics produces more clear, specific answers in context with what's being sought. Okay. Just like if I were doing a demonstration and I opened, and I've done this in the past, I open questions to the crowd, right? So what do you want to see us show a defense against, right? What do you do if he tries to punch you in the face? Then I get to start irritating people. Okay. How is he punching me in the face? What do you mean? He's just punching you in the face. Yeah, I know, but is it a straight punch? Is it a backhand? Is it an uppercut to the jaw? Is it a right cross? Right. And we'll just keep it simple like that, right? Because if I went into at what level is my body, right? Am I sitting in a chair? Am I starting to stand up? Has he already like thrown something at me and I backed off and my head's at a lower level? So the angles are, right? So what kind of punch? Okay. Oh, hook punch. Okay, great. Why? Why is he throwing the punch? Did I say something that pissed him off? Is this guy, whatever? Okay. At what angle? Right? Is it a big old flailing thing? Is it a tight in kind of thing? Right. Okay. If we narrow this down and make it specific, then we're going to get a specific defense. Otherwise, what do I do? I could throw out anything. But what if the thing that he throws at you doesn't look anything like the technique that I just demonstrated? Was it a Whiteboard Wednesday, James, where I think it was one of the earliest ones where I covered 81 different ways to throw the same fist? I do that? Yeah. Okay. Because we have 4 variables, right? We have height. Is it high, middle, or low, right? We have angle. Is it hooking? Is it clubbing, or is it straight, right? We have range. Are we close, mid, or long range? And we have, what's the other one? we have delivery method, lead, cross, or lunge. Okay, so if we pull one of those from each variable, right? One of those three, each variable has three, right? If we pull one from each one and combine them, right, we end up with 81 different ways to throw the same fist. Right? Now, if that doesn't keep people busy for a while, okay, so because we can practice defending against any one of those 81 and or develop defenses against them, and we can also learn how to throw one in any one of those, right? And that simplified things because in the foundations course that we're just wrapping up from the live version, right? There's 9 directional striking, not just clubs or hooks or straight, right? We can come in against any given target, right? Or their body in general from 9 different directions, which leads to kind of an infinite thing, but it's enough to get people started, right? So, but anyway, so let's go back to this doubt thing, right? I have to do an end around ego at the moment because anything that you are doing now and you believe in, right? There's little to no doubt. But so let's ask the question differently. Have you ever learned anything that you did then or still do doubt that it would work on the street, work when you need it, that you doubted that it was a sound technique, skill, approach, whatever? James, I'm going to let you be their proxy for the moment, just in case nobody says anything. Is there anything that you've ever learned in any martial art you practiced that you doubted would work? Or you at least questioned whether or not you'd be able to pull that out and do it at speed in a real situation?
Sure. There's probably many different things back when I was first got into martial arts. It was all Taekwondo. I did more traditional style and Olympic style, but in the more traditional style, they had a self-defense kind of portion of the class,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of that stuff that was I don't know, it just had a lot of doubt behind it. That's actually why I started exploring other directions and ended up at Warrior Concepts, is because it didn't look like anything else we did, for one. So in the classes, and I don't know, just they're like Dave Fletch just threw in the tornado kick in Taekwondo, exactly stuff like that. I mean, we were obviously very heavy on flashy kicks or high kicks and spinning kicks, and there was even things like that. I mean, you could see that I've talked to some other instructors that, there's always the potential for the application of it, but
Mm-hmm.
for the time that they wanted to dedicate to like something that specific, that it would be probable that you could use it in like a street altercation kind of thing. Like if you watch any like CCTV footage or anything, like how's this going to work in that and not end badly for me, even if it might work in that moment, in that context though, if other people are involved or anything like that. And
See, you took away my second question, right? What made you doubt it, right? So since your context was looking for real world self-defense and you thought about things, right? The active self-defense videos that are on where they had the closed circuit TV uh, things, and like, holy shit, right? I couldn't do that. I don't have the time for it. I'm exposing certain targets or whatever. That makes sense. Could you see, well, can you understand why a lot of people stick with the system and have no doubt about it? Right? What would make somebody not have any doubt about it? They don't have any experience in a real world situation. They're in it they want to have a black belt in a martial art, right? So the martial art itself doesn't matter. What matters is that they have this sign of, right? Um, they see it happening in sport kind of stuff all the time, and so that
Yes.
makes perfect sense. Whatever, right? So there's lots of reasons that we would have doubt. There's also reasons that we would not have doubt, right? Um, the other one is just flat out, and when I say ignorance, I don't mean stupidity, right? I don't mean this in a negative term. I have to keep reminding people when they go through Mikio programs, when we talk about ignorance, we're in the realm of the unconscious uh, incompetency, right? We don't know, right? We don't know, right? So, um, but there's this thing, right? So, there's this doubt, right? Anybody else toss anything out?
Dave just threw out people with Superman level physical skills.
Hmm. Yeah, I remember uh, my first teacher in this art is way taller than me, right? Damn near half a foot taller than me. Okay, he's 6'1", 6'2", something like that, right? And I'm 5'6" and change. So there was a long period of time where I was trying to do certain techniques and learn things and whatnot. I had no doubt in the technique or whatever. What I had was that like burning fire in my gut. I'm going to figure this out, right? And I didn't make a correlation to the fact that since he was taller and had longer reach, he could make things work the way he did them, right? He would demonstrate techniques and whatnot, and he could make them work, but I could not, right? And I didn't make the correlation to my angling needs to be different, my timing needs to be different, whatever, right? Because he was taller, because he was bigger, upper body bigger, that kind of thing, right? And it didn't become evident until I started working with a different teacher who was my height, and he pointed out that somebody who's bigger, taller, has greater reach, right? You, right? And this is not meant in a derogatory way, because if you run into somebody your height or bigger, stronger, whatever, you're going to run into the same problem I have, right? You can afford to have sloppy taijutsu against most students in the dojo. Not that I want you to have it, not that you want to have it, but you can afford to have it because you have an advantage. You have a reach advantage. You have, you know what I mean? I always joke around with guys that are built like you. You're how tall?
6'3".
Yeah, 6'3", right? Long ass legs, short torso, whatever, right? So my joke is always when you go back into Ichimonji, people should need freaking binoculars to find you. And when you come back in, they're going to need depends, because the amount of inertia you can build up because of that distance, you're just going to have more power behind things, right? But because you can step back half the distance based on leg length and whatnot that I have to step back, you're going to be out of range, but I need to be dead on the money because of height, right? And so I can go back into Ichimonji against one of yours, and you can't reach me with another one unless you step, right? I mean, it's obvious that you're going to be too fucking far away. Excuse my language, but I got to hit an angle where you just can't reach me unless you step. And because you're taller and longer, that also slows you down because you have to, right? So I have to understand that physiology and the geometry of the body better, right? Again, this stuff that people call BS, right? And I don't mind that people call BS, because I'm okay with doubt. I'm okay with people not being able to get their head wrapped around it, right? Because they don't know what they don't know, but they think they know, right? But they're willing to condemn, or their snap judgment or whatever is to condemn things outside of their realm of understanding, right? Where the wise person will look at something they've never seen before and go, when would that work? That's interesting. Because if they're doing that, they might try doing that shit to me. And while I don't think it is valid that I'm going to do it, what will I do when somebody throws that at me? Right? Or tries to do it, right? Because one of the things that was used to eradicate doubt or to dispel other systems, skills. In a lot of martial arts that I was in was you just have to be faster or trickier so that doesn't happen. Yeah. Well, what if you're not? Right? What if you're now 60 with arthritis or, all those things that you're never going to be, right? Or you got the flu and you can barely fricking move, let alone, think clearly or whatever, right? Now what? Well, that's never going to happen to me, right? Because you're invincible. In that case, why bother fucking learning martial arts at all, right? If you're already indestructible, then you're wasting your time learning something you don't need, right? Because unless somebody comes at you with kryptonite there, Superman, right, it's not going to matter. See, the cognitive dissonance that people get away with, right, where they have two conflicting fucking views, right? It's kind of like when we talk to women about learning self-defense or taking a rape defense class or whatever, and they dismiss it by going, "Oh, I don't need that. That's my boyfriend or my husband's job." Oh, okay. So they can defend themselves. They're really good at self-defense, and they'll go, yeah, okay. Like he couldn't fight his way out of a wet paper bag. Did you just listen to the insanity that just came out of your freaking mouth? Right? You don't need to take classes because that's his job, but you just in the next breath said he couldn't defend himself. So it's just this dumbass response to cover up laziness, right? Or fear or anxiety or whatever, right? But we go through this kind of stuff all the time. And this is the kind of stuff for anybody that thinks they want to do Mikyo. If you think the esoteric lessons or the programs or whatever are beneath you, below you, above you, not for you or whatever, Mikyo accelerates that shit 10 times faster, 100 times faster, whatever. Yeah, it'll ferret that shit out really fast. And of course, people will quit because same reasons they quit from other martial arts, right? Because they can't do it fast enough. It doesn't live up to their expectations. They're not as good at it up front, right? But the point of going through that first thing is to ferret out all the shit you can't do. I don't know if I just shared it or not. I did on the Online Ninja Training Facebook page. I shared a video short with a guy named David Goggins. David Goggins, right? It's just crazy motherfucker. Anyways, and that's coming from me. He talks about this idea of dreams. Everybody's got a dream, right? Everybody's got a dream. The dream is bullshit, right? The dream, people, if you still have a dream, it's because you're not acting on it, right? It's one thing to have a vision that you're working toward, because what the dream does is gives you a to-do list, right? To do that thing. I just had a private one-on-one with one of my guys this morning, and we were looking at this idea that, when people stop at visualizing attaining a goal. And I talk about this a lot, but it's only one step. It's like the first of a multi-step kind of thing, right? So at least 13 steps in the process, depending on the system that you go through. So they'll visualize the goal, but they don't make the connection that the person that they want to be thinks a certain way, communicates a certain way, has a certain skill set, are able to accomplish things in certain realms, right? What are they? And all of those things, because they visualize, but they make the assumption that they're going to be the same person they are now, then with just a bunch of skills. But you're not. Any more than you're the same person that you were when you were 9. Ego thinks it is, but you're not. You don't have the same fears, the same desires, the same jokes don't make you laugh, whatever. And on top of that, your body isn't the same. And I don't just mean you look different. I mean, your organs have all replaced themselves multiple times over. Like you don't have anything in your body now that you that you had when you were 9, right? So you're not going to be the same person, but they want the benefits with, but they want this, they want to be the same. You're not. So when you visualize this, right, and then you determine what they're able to do, you end up with a to-do list. I have to learn these things. I have to practice these things. I have to experience these things, right? It's all going to be different, right? Just like you can't relate to the 9-year-old you have memories, but they're these little flashes, right? These little blips. Okay. Can you imagine tolerating the same things today that you tolerated when you were 9? I guess if you still need a mommy and daddy, maybe, but it's not the same, right? Well, the opposite's true too, right? Can you imagine having the same possibilities and the same open thinking and the same, belief that you can be this grand thing that you had when you were 9, that somewhere along the way you gave up on? Okay. They're equally true, right? But anyway, so anything else pop in, James, that I can address before?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. So just one more little blip here with the hierarchy of competency, right? It's designed like a triangle because it's going to take a lot of perseverance and courage and whatnot to stick through all of the incompetency, to ferret out and to load up the second tier, right? Which is conscious incompetency, right? Because the more I screw up, the more I fail, the more I realize my coordination's off or whatever, right? I'm making a list. I'm making a list of the shit that I know how it's supposed to look. I know what I'm supposed to know. I know what the skill sets are. I know what the expectations are. But I also know I can't do those things, or I can only do it half, or I can only do it 3/4 or 10% or whatever, right? So it's making a list. So the second tier, conscious incompetency, comes out of all that hard work. But both of these tiers, the movement is really freaking slow, right? Because I'm learning kata, I'm learning these things, I'm trying to get good enough to do it, whatever, right? And I'm aiming for conscious competency. It's smaller. Also, for 2 reasons. One, less people get there. Okay. Most drop out because it's just too damn much hard work, right? But it's smaller because you're spending less time there, right? I know what it's supposed to look like, and now I can do it, right? But it's also where people stop as well, because the goal was what? To be able to do them. Okay. But if you still need to think about it, if you still need to do it like consciously, right? I have to think about, do the kata, this step, that step, whatever, okay? Or this skill or whatever. That's not mastery. It's proficiency, right? In the dojo, it's proficiency if the goal was to be able to do martial arts moves, okay? But the top tier, and sometimes you don't know that you're in the top tier until you surprised yourself by doing something you didn't realize was into the degree that it came out. The top tier is unconscious competency. I asked somebody tonight what they thought unconscious competency was. And what did she say? I didn't know I knew it. Okay? No. Conscious competency is knowing that I know it, right? Unconscious competency is knowing it so freaking well that it's the new habit pattern. You don't have to think about it to do it. I don't have to think about the English language and my vocabulary set to have been talking for what? The last almost hour and communicating what I'm communicating inflection, all those kind of things, right? The muscles are developed that I can just open my mouth and say what needs to be said in this language. Okay. I'm not at the same level with Japanese. Okay. However, right, most of us don't have to think about the vocabulary, the order or structure of words, nothing like that, right? We simply have something to say and blunt it just right. We're communicating an experience, and there it is. We're communicating. We're communicating a certain emotional state that we're in, right? We don't communicate. I am angry, so I am going to communicate this as though I am angry. No, you're fucking angry, so that conditions the words that you're using, right? So that's unconscious competency, right? If you're driving, if you drive, right, you can be driving past or coming up on an intersection. It looks like some yahoo's not going to stop at that stop sign, right? Your body will execute upwards of 100 micro movements in half a second and give you like left brain time to flip this guy off or otherwise communicate some other way, right? But unconscious competency is the ability to control that vehicle and to execute those movements outside of conscious intellectual left brain functions, right? You know how to drive, conscious competency. I know how to do it. But when you're doing it, you don't have to think about it, not even a little bit. And if you do, it's in moments where it's atypical. I'm slipping and sliding on ice and it's going in a certain direction. And I have to have this little flash from the left brain that goes, turn into it. Okay. Because the instinct is to, right, steer in the opposite direction. Right. So we have these little flashes, right? It's the same thing inside of a fight, right? Or inside of a self defense situation. Right. So, but here's the thing doubt, having a healthy sense of doubt in your training is a must, because the alternative is to be a blind disciple, a blind follower, and just do whatever the person says. Okay. There's lots of people that do that, but right. So what I got from every single one of my teachers, whether it was in the Mikyo realm or the Nijutsu realm or self-defense, even in the military, right? A healthy sense of doubt, right? Because that makes you a critical thinker. Okay. It makes you, at least in part, awake, right? So I may not doubt the technique, but I may doubt that I'll be able to do it in the moment I need to do it. Because this, I got through the unconscious and the conscious incompetency, and now I can do it, but I'm always doing it in the dojo. I'm always doing it in a controlled environment or under controlled conditions, right? Like a sitting break fall or something like that, right? I do it when he does uchigake, whatever, sweeps my leg out from under me, and that's how I'm saving myself because he just caught me and I'm dropping. Okay. But it's not until, right, your body does it, but you're thinking about something else, right? Or you have these little flashes of not that way, right? And then your body just executes on this thing, but things happen so fast that you don't have time to think about it, right? And so often life is the thing that shows you that it's into that degree. Okay. So, coincidentally, I love these happy little coincidences, right? Where, and I think we have to account for those in training too, but that's for another episode. And here's an example, right? I chose this topic yesterday, right? Put up all the stuff, put it out, right? And I didn't know until what time, James? 3:30, 4 o'clock. I don't know. Somewhere was it just before class that you told me, or it wasn't after class? It was just before class, right? So somewhere between 4 and 4:30 this afternoon, when James came into the dojo, he shared a story that was freaking perfect for this, right? Because whether he had it or not, right? There are these strange moves for certain types of break falls and whatever. And then they, okay, when will I use them? When will I not? Or we learn it under the context or in a certain context, right? Because mastery is the ability, or wisdom, or whatever you want to call it, is the ability to use any given skill outside of the context that you learned it. Okay. Like tying shoes, right? That knot, it's a slip knot, right? But you use that to make a bow to tie a package together. You can make it whatever, right? That's the same knot we use to tie our freaking gi jackets closed, right? So shoes are not even involved, but it's a utility knot, right? So, but he came in with this thing, and I'm going to turn this over to James and let him tell this little. I almost broke my legs in 4 places. Story, right? That should have told him how deep this ability with Tai Henjutsu is inside. And the breakfall was, I would say it's nothing like he's ever done, but it's actually a combination of multiple breakfall movements adapted to a given situation. Yeah. And all because, right? Okay, we're doing this not just break falls, but we're doing stretching a certain way, right? And when the hell am I ever going to freaking need this kind of flexibility in my hips? Because nobody that I've ever trained with has ever had me stretch this way or this joint this way or whatever, right? But the insights that came out of today's incident, yeah. So I'm going to turn that over to James and let him tell a story. So James, I'm even going to make you the big guy. So can you switch it? How do we do that? Ta-da! Look at that. It's James. Everyone, Sensei James. Right.
So it was just this past Saturday afternoon. I was at work, which is right now at basically a commercial greenhouse that grows leafy greens hydroponically. And one of my coworkers needed me to check something with him out in the greenhouse. And it was after we were done harvesting stuff for the day. So there was lettuce and whatnot on the ground, and the floor is concrete, and it's very smooth concrete, so it's easy to clean. And I was just walking out through with him, and I went to walk what I thought was over a pile of lettuce that somebody had swept up. And the next thing I know, my right leg is just like I had stepped on a sheet of ice, and my right leg shot straight out in front of me. And I've slipped before, and typically I just sort of sink on the remaining leg, like a single leg squat basically, and just catch myself that way before I hit the ground. And I had started to do that, and for whatever reason, my left leg, that as I started to go down on it, my left foot just rolled underneath me. The ankle just rolled in some weird way, and I just felt all my body weight dropping on that leg in a very bad way from my ankle, and I could feel it stretch the whole way up through my knee and whatnot. And I just, the thought of you're about to blow your ankle or your knee or something flashed through as I'm falling, and just very quickly, before I realized really what was going on, I had sort of thrown my upper body and twisted in a way that sort of ended up in a side half forward slapping break fall kind of position that took all my weight off that, or most of my weight off that leg. So I was able to basically catch myself. I mean, I still hit the ground, but like nothing happened. I didn't sprain my ankle or my knee. And most importantly, I was between a stainless steel conveyor belt and a concrete pond wall, and I didn't crack my head off either of those or my face off the ground or anything. So I ended up hitting the ground that way, and the guy that was with me was like, holy hell, are you okay? That looked horrible. And I just started laughing a little bit, because at that point I realized that could have went very horribly wrong. And it just happened, and I caught myself and picked myself up and just kept on going. And thankfully, nothing happened. It was a little sore, pop Spadville, but it also reinforced that brake falls are meant to keep you from breaking. That it tweaked a little bit, but nothing that wasn't gone by the end of the day. So it did exactly what it was supposed to do. And
How'd I lose you? Sorry.
mhm.
How do we get you in there? I lost your small picture. Sorry about that.
Mhm.
You know what? We're both listed as Daishion Miller. How'd that happen? That's pretty cool. It's not James. It's me. I just look different. Anyway, so you guys should still be able to hear James. So one of the things that James brought up when he originally told me the story was, had he not ever done those stretches to the ankle
Oh,
where
right, right.
we have our feet flat this way, right? But we'll roll our foot up onto the side or the side top of the foot while being upright in Shizen. And we'll, apply weight and all that to stretch it. And the more flexible it gets and the more comfortable we get with that, then we can walk on the side edge of our foot, right?
Mhm.
Because the ninja would use that as a stealth type movement as well in areas where you can't put the foot down flat like this. You need a very thin profile, right? So I think what you told me earlier was that had you not done those stretches, you don't think that your ankle would have survived going as far as you did into that movement.
Right, yeah, it was fully rolled, and I was, like I said, my body weight was on it, but I was collapsing on my leg, like dropping full.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that if it wasn't for that, I would have definitely severely sprained, if not popped it completely. Because
Yeah. So I don't know if people can imagine what he did. The end position would have looked, because once he turned to take the weight off that ankle, it shot out from under him, right? So he ended up with his lower body in like a side break fall position,
right,
upper body turned to the side, so he was twisted in the middle in a forward slapping break fall, because people assume that forward slapping break fall, you're always going to be falling to the front instead of your upper body is in a certain position, right, to receive the ground, right? So anyway, so the world points those kind of things out, but having a healthy sense of doubt so that you don't get caught up, right, in being the blind follower, right, being the whatever, right, is an okay thing, right? And it's respectful unless you have an instructor who demands blind obedience, in which case I would say run, don't walk. Okay. The same thing I would say if they were trying to convince you that, all their techniques are unbeatable. What do I tell you guys? All techniques are beatable, right?
Mhm.
So, which is why we work on countering the counter and countering the counter, and right, because it's they're supposed to give you an advantage, not make you invincible. You have a human body, for God's sake. Good luck being invincible, right? So, but it should be it should be okay, and given that the instructor is, a decent human being, it's respectful to look at an instructor and say, I don't understand how that works, or I don't understand how to do it. Okay, because that's certain levels of doubt, right? Um, I don't understand when that would even be used. I mean, I've never seen that used in a fight. Okay, and to deconstruct or to reverse engineer some of the comments that have been left on my videos and other people's videos, right? Instead of saying that's a bunch of bullshit that would never work, or yeah, like I can't remember ever a time that I've grabbed somebody's wrist or somebody's ever grabbed my wrist, right? So yeah, bullshit. Okay. Instead of saying that, right? I've never grabbed anybody by the wrist, or nobody's ever grabbed me by the wrist, right? I don't understand how that would happen, right? Because if you say that, then the teacher, I'll give you for instance, because I say this on a regular basis, right? Um, if he has a reason to do it, he'll do it, right? Even if this guy's never grabbed a wrist in his life, but every time you get close enough, and I started taking my knuckles and rapping on the bones or the knuckles of his hand, right, to cause pain, right? One of his options may be to knock my arm aside or to grab that damn hand so I stop doing that. Or when we're doing Hanbo stuff, right? Somebody starts to get closer. Everybody jumps straight to the technique. But what about the stuff leading up to that? Okay. So he tries to get into range, right? How do I make him attack me from the distance that the kata says he's going to attack me from? Why would he do that? Okay. He's not reading out of the same textbook I am, right? He's going to attack me the way he wants. But I can establish distance by, as he starts moving in, if he gets within range, I don't have to do a cool move yet. I can just reach out with the tip of that freaking hanbo, start knocking on the bones of his hand. He'll establish proper distance. Well, what the hell's proper distance? Out of range of my damn stick, because I don't need a 2,000-year-old secret to use on this guy if I can convince him to stay farther away from me. And I don't have to worry about random chaotic movements based on how he wants to do things, and then hoping I can make my technique work in there. Okay. And we, every technique has its range. Every technique has its, they're not all the same, not just because the moves are different. For instance, right? We're in week 14 in the Foundations of Ninja Self-Defense program, or mod 1 in our pre-black belt phases. And so this week we revisited cross-side wrist grabs. Two of the techniques worked with, one was raw technique, break the grip, and now I'm going to use a different strategy, move to a different place than I taught originally, so that we can start taking advantage of blind spots in the human and the body, right? So we're combining different things that people have learned along the way, but bumping the strategy and the tactics up, right, a notch. Another one was when he grabs me, as I come around, things kind of loosen up for whatever reason, right? I just have more mobility in here. Okay. Now, when James was grabbing me, he could have certainly grabbed me and held me down, right? But we're now we're nearing the end of October, going into November, which means we're well into autumn. And where I live, it's getting cooler and all that kind of stuff. So somebody would have a better grip now than they would have had a month and a half or 2 months ago, right? July, August, palms are going to be sweaty. I'm going to be sweaty. Add in the adrenal response, whatever. No matter how firm this guy's grip is, things could get a little slippery just because, right? The conditions are ripe for that kind of thing, right? Or he grabs me by the wrist, but I'm wearing a certain type of clothing and the material, right, doesn't allow for bite. It moves, okay? I'm thinking like Under Armour and stuff like that, right? You can grab that firmly, but you're not latching on as well, right? And different types of material, right? And I don't think people factor that stuff in because they consistently train in a martial arts uniform, right? And they don't look at these kind of things. But anyway, it frees up, and we got a variation for that where he started out grabbing my wrist, and I end up grabbing his wrist and then doing an armbar on him, okay? And then we did this one where he just moves in and grabs it and pins the hand down. So all those earlier techniques of being able to come around and, do this leverage to take him off, or even the knuckle buster kind of thing where we're pounding down on his hand, it's just in a bad angle, right? So how do you get out of this one kind of thing, right? By changing that up. So this is the kind of thing in that phase 3, right? And all of our modules are laid out like this, where we switch up variables so that we understand that, look, this is not a freaking catch-all kind of thing, right? But this is where I would go with a student, right? I understand when this would be used. Okay. So I'm now going to paint a picture of a scenario, okay, that they can start to get their head wrapped around, right? And 99.9% of the time, a student will say, "Oh, I never thought about that." Good. And I normally joke and say, "Well, I've earned my keep today then," right? But that's part of the teacher's job, right? To point these things out, because either they've thought things through to that, they've seen it, or they've lived it, right? So they're trying to broaden your horizons, okay? But it puts the technique into context, okay? And those things are all perfectly respectful, right? Because of the way they're approached. I don't get it. I understand the context or whatever. And sometimes, and this can sound like the teacher's being disrespectful, but they're not, because sometimes you're not going to get your head wrapped around it until you've had more experiences. Kind of like a kid, right? If my 4-year-old grandson is helping me work on my car, right? And I just want him handing tools to me, or we're just having a little bonding experience or whatever, right? He has no idea how that freaking internal combustion engine works, right? But he could be throwing all kinds of freaking ideas at me. Grandpa, what if you took that piece over there and put it over there? Because like it really works like this, because he can come up with all kinds of things. And no matter what I say to him, not going to compute. So I say, that's a really good idea, buddy. Can you hand me that wrench right there? Right? Can you go see if Grammy can, have you send a cold drink out with you or whatever, right? But I'm going to tell him, that's a good idea. Okay. So, but in the context of class, right? And this happens in Japan a lot. So if you don't like when an American teacher says it, you're really not going to like when a Japanese teacher says it, right? And you say, when would I do this? Why would I do this? I don't understand. The teacher's going to laugh at you and go, doesn't matter. You can't do it. See, those questions come down the line, right? Until you can do it, what does it matter when it would be used, how it would be used, whatever. James, can you imagine us setting up a training drill so that we can all practice doing that break fall just the way you did it today? But in a future class, when you're trying to teach the side sitting break fall, the ankle rolling kind of thing, stretch, or the forward slapping break fall or whatever, and you're getting resistance from students because they don't like it. I've never been good at this, right? You now have a story to tell about how later on you need to be at an ability where you might need to use a third of 3 different skills at the same time, or in a cascading effect, to not have your body blow apart. Okay. It's kind of like when I did that sitting at that Tachi Nagade, right? And still broke a little bone piece on my back. And how many people said, well, where was your break falls then? My break fall was working just fine. Thank you very freaking much. I broke off a small piece of a vertebrae and saved my skull and from my brains being splattered all over my porch and my wife coming home and finding me that way. So I lost a fingernail, and you still ended up in the hospital. I did. Didn't end up in the morgue because I saved my skull. Right? I know exactly where I landed, and I know exactly how I landed. Sometimes you can't save everything. But without that skill, dude, because it happened in the blink of an eye, and I slipped on ice. Ice that wasn't there 30 minutes before. And coming down on concrete that's shaped like a chisel, and there were 3 of them. Okay. So, yeah, I'm not paralyzed. I'm not, just like in a fight, you're not invincible. People train like they're not going to get punched. They're not going to get something broken. Your job is not to not have those things happen. Your job is to not have them to the degree that they're going to get, TV's getting turned off. Right. So, but anyway, right. It's respectful to point out those things. You may not like the answer that comes back. Like, the answer doesn't matter right now. You can't do it. Okay. Some people aren't going to like the answer that comes back later in their training when they realize that, we didn't have all those little pockets or packets of information. They were made up. right? So the thing you keep calling traditional was made up in this generation or the one previous, okay? Because in the 60s and 70s, even in the early 80s, we didn't have these pockets. We didn't have these groupings, right? This grouping of stuff, right? Now, they were put into context and you start to get the logic as to how they were put together, why they were put together. They were expedients for this or that or whatever, but you're not going back more than, a couple of decades to find out that, oh, that wasn't traditional. That wasn't the way it was done. Okay. That'll rock some people's world. Okay. But you won't sound like some people that I know in this art where, they were trying to get something and really struggling with it. Right. And they could not for the life of them make it work. Right. And then, and they were working with Hatsumi Sensei, right, at the time. And Hatsumi Sensei showed them the correct way to do it because and I learned this little method and it works wonders, right? For the right students. He showed them a technique that was in a broken form to see if they were actually, if they were learning, if they were critical thinkers, right? If they would try to work it out, right? And figure out that something off right here, right? But because they were just right blind followers, right? And then the teacher chuckles and goes, well, here's the way it's done, right? Does that work better, right? So part of this lesson is I will lie to you. And my one friend, peer at the time, is now doing more other martial arts because damn it, I pay for lessons and I expect to be taught the right way. You don't play these freaking mind games with me. You don't lie. You don't whatever, right? I'm paying you to give me and so screw it. I'm not putting up with this shit. I'm going to go someplace else where they're going to play my game. Except we're learning ninjutsu. How the hell are you going to learn to sort through other people's bullshit or see clearly in that kind of realm if, right? And, we can believe that we're critical thinkers until somebody pulls a little switcheroo on us like that. And we got caught in our own stagnant or static thinking. But this disrespect comes flying out, right? That's me since on tens of thousands of students at that point. So, whatever. Okay? Not that he wasn't sorry to see somebody go. And he blew it off way more than I would have because my friend and peer kind of unleashed in a very disrespectful way. But okay. So, but there's this man, and the word I chose was douchey, right? This level of disrespect. It doesn't matter if you buy into somebody else's stuff or not, right? But some people feel the need to assign themselves, I don't know, the martial arts police or in whatever realm, right? Going around and telling people that they know better, even if it's implied, right? You're full of shit. That doesn't work, right? Da da da. Okay. Okay. To me, all you're highlighting is, okay, you've never thought of that, right? You don't know how it works. And so you're going to condemn it. But even if you do know for sure that it doesn't work, right? I don't comment on anybody's stuff, right? Even the dumbest shit that I've ever seen, okay? Because we'll grab things and we'll try it out and we'll go, yeah, okay? Because one of the lessons I got from Hatsumi Sensei is at the advanced levels, you need to be able to look at somebody's technique and either recognize, even if it's flawed, that the premise is correct or that's something you should never do. Okay? That's a level of understanding that goes way beyond I know the moves. Okay. But I'm not going to correct those who are in error because I don't have any responsibility to them. Right? I have responsibility to my students. Okay. For them, okay, I was also taught to not try to re-educate the masses. Because if I re-educate the masses, I lose my advantage, right? I double, triple, 10x, whatever the number of people that could bring those same skills back at me. Okay. So let them go, leave them alone. Right. But anyway, right. So just hopefully I don't have anybody following me that's that kind of thing. Right. James, remember when we rebooted the podcast, and there was somebody else that was inviting other people onto their podcast. I don't even know if they're still around anymore. I haven't seen anything. But they had a whole following, and they would do lives just to get on with certain people. They had these groupies and whatnot that would get on and spend all their time doing nothing but talking down or badly about other people.
Mm-hmm.
That's your time. That's the time you're going to spend doing what? How the hell is that? How is that related to your training other than stroking your ego? Right. And so he always tried to come across as very enlightened and neutral and, trying to spread things, to the world and whatnot, except those of us who sat back and gathered information, like we're not just jumping on somebody's podcast because we got the opportunity to do things, right? If I'm going to be in an interview with somebody or whatever, that has to be a three-way value, right? Yes to that guy, right? Because he's sharing me with his people who trust him, right? It has to be valuable to them, but you know what? It also has to be valuable to me, because I don't need to talk to a bunch of people that are just going to, they're going to jump on this and then change the feel and the environment and the dynamic, right? Because that'll just change everything. But anyway, I think he tried to get like Stephen Hayes on, who turned him down, and he said the same thing I said, right? Which was, I don't like what you're doing and where you're going with things. So thank you, but no thank you. And he had a pretty big following, I think, right? What's that?
It was a decent size.
It was a decent size, right? And then he invited me, and I let it go for a little while because I needed to, I didn't know him from Adam or whatever. And then not only, and I don't have a problem if somebody has naysayers, because, if you're doing something right, if you're doing it right, you should be very polarizing, right? There's going to be just as many people that hate you as that like you, if not more, right? Hatsumi Sensei has had plenty of haters, right? Naysayers and all that, right? Hell, if Jesus and Muhammad and all them were not above having haters, then who the hell am I, right? But, and he had plenty of those people, no big deal, right? But right, I had to start looking at things, and what I started noticing was how he handled them, how he did things, right? Wasn't there an episode, or he went live or something, and it was supposed to be a review of our podcast? And this, I thought it was funny. I didn't take offense to it. He wanted to share that with his people and have a review of it and stuff. And he had me playing in the background or something like that on one of his screens. Do you remember that?
Oh, right. Yeah.
He strummed a guitar the entire time, so nobody could hear anything. But it was almost like he was trying to validate me, but what he was doing was making it damn near impossible, right? So anyway, so when it finally came down to it, I just, I said thanks, but no thanks. I'm not getting a good feel about it or whatever. And then the next several messages were just hate, flaming kind of things. And that just spoke volumes. So, so anyway, I've gotten used to, and I've gotten kudos from people for putting up with the bullshit, but, there's a healthy respect. And I think I don't think anybody that's on and listening, or that will listen, has a problem identifying what I'm talking about, right? This disrespect, douchey, and even what I find falls under douchey disrespect as well. I was telling James this before the episode started. This also goes for people that are in a group or in a dojo or in an organization, and they talk badly about it. Okay. In Actually, during Thursday's 7 Steps class, we were discussing um, the precepts, right? The 5 precepts that practitioners take, because they've been proven for centuries, right, to not produce bad karma, right? Don't do these things, you won't have shit stacking up in your life, kind of thing. And they're pretty much the obvious things, and that comes from the original form, right, of where Mikyo comes from, right? So, but in the second stage, there's often things added, and then third, whatever, right? So, but in the Mahayana, for bodhisattva, right, for these people who are helping other people, right, there's other ones added to this, right? It's not finite like people like they try to remember things, right? So one of the ones, this just popped into my head, one of the ones in that expanded set is not broadcasting errors that members of your school, your sect, your whatever have made, because we're all practitioners. We're all going to make mistakes along the way, right? But you don't go broadcasting other people's mistakes. You don't talk down about them, whatever, right? You don't uh, you don't speak ill of your teacher. You don't speak ill of the program. You don't speak ill um, of the group of fellow practitioners, right? Um, and the reason for that, well, let me give you here's a story, right? A bunch of years ago, I had one person that I was allowing to work off their tuition. They were in a bad financial state, whatever, but they were willing to help with admin things at the dojo, all kinds of things, right? So pretty cool, right? Unfortunately, years later, when I took them to Japan, they were one of these embarrassments that they were no longer a member of the school on our way back. Okay. But this was before that occurred. I had somebody else working part time, and they were in a commission based kind of position. Right. And so they helped with admin things. But at that time, we also had a way to get prospective students by just when we met people out in the world, right? We had these guest pass and whatnot, and we would say, uh, depending on time of year, let's just use a general one, right? Hey, have you ever thought about taking martial arts? I'm so and so with whatever. This time of year, we're giving everybody in the area a chance to just try out the program, experience the benefits the martial arts have always been known for, whatever, see if it's right for them. And we're giving away, and we had a little survey and stuff that we were doing. And it wasn't a manipulative survey. We were literally gathering information, which is what caused us to go from being the name being Miller's Martial Arts to Warrior Concepts International, right? So we had this bona fide survey. If they took the survey, we would give them this guest pass that was good for 30 days of unrestricted martial arts training, and that they could cash that in and whatever. There's a whole way to even cash it in and save $100 off their membership if they decided to get involved. Right. So, but she, she was, man, she was a hard worker. Holy crap. If I could afford to keep her full time, that's one of those moments in my life that I kick myself for. She was a go-getter. Well, anyway, she comes to me one day almost in tears, right? She tried to keep it in. She tried to, not bother me with it. But she was really, really disturbed because this other person who eventually was asked to never come back again, they were working together on admin things. And she said, the whole time that she was working with her, she did nothing but complain. She, she spoke badly about me. She spoke badly about the program. She spoke badly about how the school was being run. Um, you know, um, if she were doing it, I had certain systems in place that um, they didn't not make sense to her. She just didn't like them, and I was making her do it anyway because she would rather do it this way over here. And see, we even have a system for changing systems and upgrading things and whatnot um, because of the cost in time, effort, sometimes money, whatever. Right. So you got to show me that if you want to change, it has to be more than just you don't want to do it that way. You want to do it your way. That you have to show a 25% decrease in expense, time, whatever, or 25% increase in productivity, whatever. Right. And if you can't do that, so I don't just have a suggestion box because, you know, suggestion boxes are bullshit. Most suggestions go into suggestion boxes are not well thought through. They're just somebody wants to do it their way. And that's all there is to it. Right. But anyway, so she's distraught because this other person is just lambasting everything. Right. And I put her at ease. And I had a conversation with the other person who vehemently denied it, right? Of course, they're just trying to throw her under the bus because they're trying to steal her job, which your job is to work off your tuition, right? So, but anyway, but here's my thing with this, right? If you're doing this thing, then you don't believe in the teacher, you don't believe in the program, right? Why the hell are you there? That makes no sense, right? So, but this person that I let go would complain in any job. It's just one of these people that no matter what, no matter where they work, because I've confronted people in when I did work for other people, somebody complaining at work. And I go, you don't have to be here. You can work somewhere else. Well, you don't understand, right? Because you're setting up a business. You don't have to be here. No, you don't understand. Because if you understood and you actually took control of your life, you don't need to be here, right? So I'm dealing with the same things you are, but I smile because this is paying the bills I need to have paid until I do this other thing. And if this place really was what you said it is, I wouldn't be here. Okay. But the reality is that personality type will complain everywhere they go because they work. They don't want to work, but they work in places where they believe will hire them, right? They don't believe that they have the skill set or whatever for more, even though they want more, right? Um, but well, here's the not nice way to say it, right? Um, they have an opposing belief about being on welfare. There's a stigma in their belief system about that and what it would say about them. So they work. But they don't like it. They don't want to have to work. They want to do barely enough to not get fired, whatever. Okay. So, but these people do the same things in martial arts dojos. They do the same thing within the organization, whatever. Don't be a part of the damn organization if, are there other things going on? Yeah. Yeah. Those people are generating their own karma. Okay. So it doesn't mean you have to like everything about it, but if you recognize that everything's an opportunity for deeper understanding and everything, I used to say everything's a test. Okay. Everything's an opportunity for learning, right? The reason I call this self-protection instead of self-defense is self-defense to most people is ducking punches or not getting stabbed or whatever. To me, self-protection goes way beyond that. Okay. I actually call it more like survival, but right. Am I protecting my mental state? Am I protecting my, my ability to provide for my family? Am I protecting there's way more than just ducking punches, right? Am I protecting myself against the the acid and acidic just personalities and things like that that can swallow you up and turn you into one of them. Right. So, okay. Anyway, so James, any questions or comments or anything like that pop up?
Dave threw 2 comments in. Break falls are the most practical martial arts techniques. More
Agreed.
people are,
And
more
the least loved.
for sure.
I don't like them. Nobody gives a shit. Right. As a matter of fact, the bad guy hopes you don't like him. Right. Anyway, what else?
More people are hurt falling by far than getting injured fighting. And half of the things I have learned in this didn't make total sense until years after I first learned them.
And that, you know what? That's no different than growing up, right? Parents would do things and that doesn't make any sense. Well, it's because you have such a freaking limited view of the world, right? So, and not just you, all of us, right? And then you go, I remember now I had I had one of those evil step parents, right? And it wasn't just because like I didn't like him or whatever, right? This guy was physically, mentally, and emotionally abusive, right? So, and I remember when I was very, very young, right? Because something made me flash back when one of my teachers said this. I think it was my Nikyo teacher, right? That uh, we all have this age and we all think that we're adults and stuff, but how many things that you do are still being driven, like the vehicle is still being driven by the 6-year-old who made a decision way back, right? And here's one of those things, right? And I could have been 5, 6, whatever, right? But I remember like just the way he treated my mom, the way he, whatever, right? And I made a promise, right, that when I grew up, I was not gonna do it that way, right? I was going to da 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 da, right? Which made sense to the 6-year-old. And then I grew up and I got into relationships and I realized that if you're always doing everything the other person wants, then what? Right. And so that caused its own pain. It caused its own, right? If I was going to parent based on, and I had to recognize that even this fucking monster, right, got it right sometimes, right? That sometimes, right, not being abusive, not being, not punching my kids, right, nothing like, right, but sometimes, right? What's that old saying? Most people that have only ever watched or looked at a digital watch don't get this, but a broken clock is right at least twice a day. But you have to understand analog clocks for that to make any sense, right? So, but it's true, right? I had to recognize that, right? Sometimes. So years later, absolutely, right? Years later, didn't make any sense, right? Or how these things would mix together. James, did you ever in your wildest dream think that you would have used the ankle flexibility, what started as a sitting break fall that transitioned into a side sitting break fall with the almost damaged foot because it was the other foot that slipped, right?
Mhm.
So you started going into a sitting break fall, tachi nagare, right? Except your base ankle freaking rolled over in the process because of the surface you were on.
Mhm.
And now you need to save that. So what started as a sitting break fall on one side transitioned into a side sitting break fall on the other side out of a uber stretched ankle, thank God, right? And you did a forward slapping break fall with your torso, but to the side, right?
Mhm.
Did you ever think in your wildest dreams that those things would have gone together?
No.
No. And if I would have painted that picture, some kind of doubt would have popped in, right? Like,
Sure.
when the hell, how the hell would that even happen? Well, now you know. Right? So, it's no sense point, no point. But you're going to describe that later on, and people are going to have a level of doubt, or they're, just going to flat out tell you, fucking whacked, right? There's no way for that to even happen, right? So bullshit, right? So anyway, all right. So there's nothing else. Seriously, just
Just Victor put in there. I often wonder if these guys have ever been in a fight.
I believe. Well, I think that there's a lot of people that aren't, and they get in martial arts for lots of reasons, right? But the most of the people, and James knows this because he's right there in the trenches with me with these comments and stuff like that. A lot of these people have been in fights. Very few of these people have been in self-defense situations. Okay. And you and I know this because they think about a fight the same way. They have never considered that a fight could start out the way they assume it will. But if the other guy starts losing, he pulls out a gun and shoots you in the face, or he pulls a knife, or his friend jumps you from the side. All these things well, that's cheating shit or whatever, right? And on top of that, they got into a fight, and most of them they talk about this shit. If somebody starts something, man, you fucking finish it, and all that kind of BS, right? When we're talking about by the time we get to that point, we've exhausted a whole bunch of things trying to get us out of there, and we have no other choice. And it's an overwhelmed situation because we're not stepping up like a bull, right? So I understand the question, and I believe that it is true that a lot of them have not. But I also believe that the mentality that causes them to get into fights, not survival situations, fights, that part of them is still in junior high school or middle school or high school or whatever. It hasn't grown up. Okay. And that makes me think of something that Hatsumi Sensei told me that Takamatsu Sensei said. And he said that only those who truly have something to lose could ever really understand what it means to be a warrior. Okay? And what that means is those who have nothing to lose, or the only thing they have to lose is their ego, right? Will fight at the drop of a hat because they need the bragging rights. They need to protect whatever fragile ego is going on. They need to protect their image so that people can't see the anxiety or insecurity or whatever that's going on behind it, right? The warrior picks and chooses battles because if you get involved in the wrong one, you could lose everything, right? You have to be able to go to work every day, right? So because you've got bills, right? You've got a family to support. You've got people that depend on you for security and things like that, right? And this is really hard to convey online because when I post my videos or when anybody posts videos, they they understand how the system works, the online system, the algorithms and all that, right? I have to use words that I wouldn't normally use because that's the words that people type in to do searches for this kind of training, right? And when I use those words, I run the risk. It's a huge risk, and it plays out all the time where these guys come out of the woodwork because they can't see the difference between a fight and a survival situation or a fight and a self-defense situation because they keep interchanging the two, right? I have the same uphill battle in the workplace violence realm when I'm talking to VPs or C-suite people or whatever, right? I might as well write a mathematical equation, right? Fighting or self-defense equals fighting because the techniques or what it looks like must make it the same, but the intent's different, the setup is different. It's all that, right? So, no matter how many times Hatsumi Sensei said, right, this is the difference between martial arts and true Budo, because people keep calling themselves martial artists, because people keep referring to martial arts, they keep using the same words, right? Then the meaning stays the same, right? So again, we have to be careful, right? And here's a level of respect. Okay, um, here's a type of doubt and a type of respect, or a type of disrespect, that I'm going to leave everybody with. Right? I think that it's disrespectful to the art and the past masters and what has been passed down and taught, to confuse it, especially knowingly, right? Well, here's an example of this confusion thing, right? To confuse it with modern martial arts. Okay. Here's an example of this. I was along my career, right? I've tried my best to not butcher Japanese too badly, and so every time I've had the opportunity, because I live near several universities, right? So if I was introduced to somebody who was a native Japanese speaker, there were several years ago some professors at two of the local universities, and their wives were native Japanese. Okay, and they uh, would do tutoring for people that especially for school, for the university students. But I found this out, and I'm like, "Ooh, how much?" Right? And so I would have a standing class once a week. They would come to my dojo, or I would go meet them for lunch or whatever, have a notebook that, whatever, right? Learn all this stuff. And so one time I needed to send a letter to Hazumi Sensei. And so I wanted to know if they would help me. Like I wrote it out in English, and if they would help me translate it into Japanese, because up to that point, I wrote the letters and then gave them to somebody else to translate. They gave it back, and then, but I wanted to, because I was doing communications and conversation, I wanted to be, I wanted to do it, right? So could you help me? Yes, of course. So what they wanted for me to do was write it out, and then, uh, then they would get their head around it, and then, we could then do it, right? So what I did was I wrote it in English, but I let it off with "Dear Sensei." Okay. Well, the first thing they fixed was the Japanese don't say "dear" anything, right? It's just "Sensei," right? But the rest was in English. Well, my whole first class before we got this thing translated was all around how "sensei" was the wrong word. Okay. So, uh, based on their context, and based on, they would come in early, um, and sit and watch me teach a class or whatever. And so, I'd make references to these things, and they did some looking up Hatsumi Sensei and articles and all that kind of stuff, right? And so she said, I don't think this is the right word. I said, "Oh no, yeah, everybody calls him Sensei. It's what we use." And she said, "Oh, see, but he teaches you more than martial arts, right?" Yes. So he teaches you about life and about all these other things, right, that make your life valuable. So the martial arts or this training is there to protect this life that you're built. He teaches you about life, right? He's, you know, and I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Okay. So the proper Japanese term is shiso, right? Shiso. A shiso is a teacher of life." Okay. I said, "Yeah, but he teaches martial arts too, and everybody uses this term." She goes, "I don't care, right? If you're trying to be respectful and let him know that you're appreciative of more than just martial arts lessons, it's shiso." Okay. Okay. So a little bit later, and I sent that letter, right? And, got the same kind of reply I normally get. But she said, "He will know that you know." And that's all that matters, right? Don't look for him to go, oh, look, you used a different word. But later I was talking to several of my peers and friends in this art, and I pointed out this shiso thing. And they argued until they were blue in the face. I just stopped arguing or discussing things. That we all call him sensei, so that's the right word, right? But she was trying to make the point that sensei is just a generic word for teacher, and not just in the martial arts, right? A school teacher is a sensei, right? It's even an honorific in some conditions where if I'm pointing out somebody, let's say I'm talking to somebody who's a young up and coming lawyer or whatnot, and they're trying to, learn the ins and outs and all that. And I point out this guy over there, it's been a lawyer for 30 years, right? And that's somebody you want to learn from, right? Instead of saying san or sama or whatever at the end of his name, I would tack on sensei, okay? Because I'm not pointing out that he's a school teacher, martial arts teacher, whatever. He's somebody that can teach you something because he really knows his craft. He really knows his thing, right? So again, this is what comes from learning from people that, gee, I don't know, they understand the culture because that's who they are. They understand the language because that's who they are, whatever, right? But anyway, people argued this stuff, but okay, they just weren't going to get, because this is what everybody does. This is what you do, man. Okay. So anyway, what else we got, James?
That was it.
That was it. All right. Well, this concludes another episode of What the Hell Was He Talking About? So anyway, thanks for sharing your little experience. So hell, you know what? Thanks for having your little experience. That's what I mean by happy little coincidence, right? I was covering this thing and I didn't have to come up with a story. Hell, James came in with one. I almost broke myself. And how'd you lead off that conversation? You led off the conversation with, I had an opportunity for the training to prove itself again. And then you told me this thing that happened. It's something like that, right? Didn't that how you
training saved my ass again?
Training saved my ass again. Right? Yeah. And I was attacked by water. And and then this guy's allies, that was a big old fucking hunkin' metal machine, and this block wall that was standing ready to knock my ass out. Right. So anyway, cool stuff. Right. So anyway, what's the thing? Oh, enrollments are open. I don't even have the topic up yet, but I've got people enrolling for our Daikomyosai seminar, our New Year's kickoff seminar. Yes, pun intended. That is coming up January 5th, 6th, and 7th. So I got that going on, and the enrollments have already started. People have started coming in, and I am in the process of also looking for breakout instructors. So if I haven't already reached out to you, don't write it off. I may. The only downside is you can't do it virtually. So, and I'm hoping to get enough this time to double up on all the breakout session time slots, which means I would have 5 or more. Right? Because if we have 4, that fills the time slots. I really want to have more than that, so that people we go back to the original premise with having breakouts in the seminars, and that is to force students. Yes, I said force students to tailor the training experience to their specific needs instead of showing up and just taking what they get. Some is going to be that way. This is the general theme. This is what I'm teaching and all that. But the breakouts they're designed to not just expand your skill set, but to make you take control of your damn training. Well, I'm just trying to learn everything, Sensei. Well, good fucking luck, because you can't learn everything. You can't focus on everything when you're practicing, right? You need to prioritize, right? What will be most beneficial in your life right now? or in the foreseeable future. Okay. So that one-on-one thing that I covered with somebody this morning, I said, the benefit that you guys all have is you have lives. Okay. You're not a monk in a monastery. So when you're learning these lessons, okay, what 1 to 3 things are you trying to get a handle on in your life right now? Great. Learn the lesson as I teach it. And then when you're practicing it, stop trying to freaking practice everything like, I got to memorize this, or I'm going to tear myself down, or whatever, right? Apply it to those things. So one of his things were financial things, getting a better grip on financial things. And another one was getting a better grip on like a relationship thing. Great. Then when I teach these lessons, run that thing through the eightfold or the noble eightfold path, or through the what we just do last time, through the, don't tell me I know this, through the precepts, or the skandhas that are coming up, or whatever, right? Personalize it, because that's the best place to start. You'll know immediately whether or not you understand it and you're producing the proper results with it. Life will get better. If it doesn't, you're bullshitting yourself, right? But some people like mental masturbation more than they like skill proficiency development. So, right, it's easier to feel like I'm doing it than to actually produce results. Okay? Just like it's easier to dream about it, someday I'm going to do that, than it is to get off the damn couch and do the friggin' work. Anyway, that's it. That's all I got. Boy, I just added that on a sour note, didn't I? Oh, well, screw it. Okay. So that's it. James, anything else? Anybody else anything in?
Dave and Victor both just said thank you.
Hey, you're welcome. You are welcome. All right. So for those of you in the regular programs and stuff, I will see you in an upcoming class this week. For those of you not, why the hell am I not seeing you in upcoming programs? So that's it. Just because it just happened again recently, right? If you're going to book a damn Zoom call with me, or a call or whatever to discuss things, you're going to tell me how much you've always wanted to do this, and whatever you'd love to don't not show up or whatever. Once is bad enough. Twice. And also, don't contact me like we have already been the best of friends, because it already sounds like you're trying to schmooze free out of me or whatever. Okay. I get it. Some people don't know how to communicate any better, but what do we do? What do we do next, Sensei? I don't know. You already canceled two appointments, or you didn't cancel 2 appointments. You just didn't show up, right? After telling me that you had your shit together and you're going to put it in your calendar book so you couldn't forget. Well, how'd that happen? And I send out reminder stuff. So anyway, I don't tolerate that stuff very well. Anyway, so I don't even know what the topic is for next week. So if you would like me to cover something, shoot us an email. What's the address that they should send that into, James? Are we doing support, or are we doing Warrior C?
Either one's fine. Warrior C is usually the one we throw out for everybody to use.
Okay. Warrior C at warrior-concepts-online.com. That's a letter C, not SEA, right? Or SEE, right? So Warrior, right? And if we don't respond, check your spelling, right? I've had people flame me like, you don't respond to anything. Well, what'd you send it to? Right? That they posted a Facebook comment, and then I look at it and I'm like, yeah. Yeah. If you have any ideas, or you want me to cover something, or you want me to expound on something even more, or I don't know, whatever, right? So we'll go ahead and wrap this up. I will talk to everybody again next time on this is KUDEN, right? So on KUDEN. Get more of KUDEN Radio. Subscribe through your favorite podcasting site, or join our clan of serious modern warriors at onlineninjaacademy.com.